the room here.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna say no to anything.
Okay.
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Adriana Jimenez, and today we're gonna talk about a topic that's very important coming into this upcoming midterm elections, and that is climate change. As our special guest, we have these lovely ladies from Sunrise Movement, and can you introduce yourself and a little bit about the work that you do with the organization?
Yeah. So my name is Marcella Mulholland, and I am a native Floridian, and I'm working with Sunrise Movement during this election cycle because I think that climate change should be an urgent priority in our political system, and I think that fossil fuel money has been hugely corrupting on our democracy and inhibited us from being able to meaningfully act on climate change. So that's what I'm working towards this midterm election, and yeah.
And my name's Renata, and I'm also working with Sunrise. I'm from Chicago originally, but now living here in Orlando to do Sunrise. And Sunrise is a national youth-led climate action group, but we are just opening up our new branch here in Orlando that started in June.
Wow.
And we'll be here through the November elections and then beyond.
Nice. And what are your roles, like, with the organization?
Yeah, so we're both fellows, so we work full-time.
So cool.
In Orlando with Sunrise, and we each have our own things that we captain within our team.
Mm-hmm.
I focus mostly on canvassing and planning to get our group out there, knocking on doors and talking to voters is my main role.
Yes, and my main role is action planning and event planning and communication stuff online, like social media.
Great. Hey, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we can start talking about all of these hurricanes, because we were talking about earlier, there is a connection between climate change and all these massive storms that have been forming. Can you guys talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as we all know, climate change, when it happens, it warms up the atmosphere and the whole planet, and when ocean waters get warmer, it creates larger, faster storms that stay in places for longer, and that's why we see the hurricane seasons getting worse and worse. And in addition to that, sea level rise, when the ice is melting and the water levels are rising across the planet, when the sea level on the coastlines is higher already when storms come in, then it just contributes to more water being surged.
And that's been happening in Florida as well. Without the hurricanes, that water rise has been a prevalent issue in Florida.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm from Puerto Rico. I can those problems in Florida, I read a little bit about it, but I don't know.
Yeah. So in Miami, it actually if there's heavy rains, even just on a normal day, there's massive flooding in the streets, and the city of Miami has had to put a bunch of money toward changing the infrastructure and lifting the streets and making them higher. And it's pretty remarkable because Florida is such a uniquely vulnerable state to climate change and sea level rise because we're surrounded by the ocean, and still so many of our politicians have taken the stance of denying that climate change is even happening and have decided to take money from the industries that are profiting off of destroying our state. And more so, I saw a study about Florida having the most coastal property that would be damaged by sea level rise and hurricanes. And as someone who grew up next to the beach, I know so many people have so much to lose from this crisis not being addressed.
Yeah, and another big problem with that, when people try to move properties further inland to escape the sea level rise and the storm surges and all the flooding, that's really only doable for people who are wealthy or who have support from the government. And a lot of times lower income communities and communities of color are left behind there and don't have the resources or the ability to literally move the land up. That's not something that's accessible to everyone. So then we see this problem of climate change and sea level rise just exacerbating problems that already exist with housing inequality.
Wow. Yeah, you address so many issues in under one belt. That's crazy, but that's how it is. And can you talk a little bit about how, in a way, this is not preventable because the damage is already made, right? A big part of the problem is already done. But what can we do? What can we do to prevent it of it getting worse, basically?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like we know exactly what's causing climate change and what's causing these storms to get like bigger and stronger and all the flooding. And that's like the burning of fossil fuels. And the reason that this is happening and the reason that like we're not transferring to a renewable energy society and economy and stuff is because there are really, really wealthy people, like billionaires, who run the fossil fuel companies, and they profit every time like these disasters happen, and every time that we're burning more fossil fuels and like contributing more to climate change. So I think, and like kind of what Sunrise is all about is like making the connection and understanding that like if we want to tackle this problem of climate change and all the effects that it's having, like we need to target and go after the industry that's like profiting off of it and like fueling it. And in addition to that, there are politicians that take money and campaign contributions from these industries, and that's like the reason that they're not taking like action against climate change to protect communities. So we really believe in like calling out politicians that take money from these industries and saying like it's not acceptable for you to be profiting off of climate disaster when like we know there are solutions to these problems.
I remember someone framed it once as like the people, like climate change as an issue is like so freaking overwhelming, and it feels like so hard to address, and like you said, it feels like we already missed the opportunity. But someone framed it once, they're like the people who are responsible for this crisis have first and last names and addresses, and like not saying we have to like go to their houses, but like just to make the crisis more like tangible and like give concrete actions for what to do. Like the politicians responsible for this, we know who they are. The corporations responsible for this, we know who they are, and it's just a matter of building the political support to like vote those people out of office and to like better regulate the industries responsible for this. And to your point about it feeling like the time has passed to do something about it, like there's evidence that like a lot of these fossil fuel corporations like knew about climate change decades ago and put money into studies to find out how this would affect their bottom line and their business, and they knew that climate change was going to be a threat to humanity like a long time ago, and then in response to those findings like climate change was, because they knew that they had a lot to lose from this being recognized by the public.
So in other words, what is fossil fuel? Like how can people
Do you want to explain?
Yeah, so fossil fuels are like mostly oil, coal, and gas. They're like sources of energy that come from the ground. And the problem with burning fossil fuels is that they're like millions of years old and they've been under the ground for so long, and they're meant to stay there. And like the planet has like natural cycles of carbon where like carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere and then it's like reabsorbed back into the earth by like plants that like suck it in and produce oxygen, like trees. But the problem with when we like dig up all this like oil and coal and gas that's like under the ground and has been there for millions of years and like burn it in mass amounts, then we're like disrupting that system and throwing off like the earth's like natural like balance, and like the earth then doesn't have the ability to like suck back all that carbon. So it builds up in the atmosphere and like creates a warming effect and like traps all the heat of the planet inside and heats everything up.
Yeah, that's a great explanation.
What were you gonna say? Well, just that like you don't need to be an expert in climate science to recognize that this is an issue, and just thinking about it like instinctively, like would you want to live next to one of these power plants that are polluting the air in your neighborhood? Like no one wants to live near these things because you can like breathing these things in makes you sick. We know that people who live next to these toxic industries have higher rates of cancer and asthma and things like this, and that's effectively what's happening to the whole planet. And you don't need to be an expert on this to know also that we have the technology to like do things better. Like we have the solutions to these problems. There's solar energy is like a booming field. There's also wind turbines, and like we can change society and transform our way of getting.
I like that. Can you talk about some of the other options? Because like, a lot of people don't know like the details. Like they don't see it as a tangible thing that we can do.
Yeah. Well, we like the technology is there, and there's evidence that if we really made addressing climate change a priority, we could transform our economy to be based off of renewables. So solar panels are like the panels you see that essentially take energy and heat from the sun and then can fuel like your house, your car, electricity, stuff like that. And then wind turbines are the like big white things with like they like spin and get energy from the wind. Sometimes you can see them in like fields when you're driving by. There's not that many of Florida, but I always get excited when I see them. And that technology is there, and it's actually like economically feasible to transition to those. It's just a matter of society making that a priority.
Yeah, and I think another reason that like of course renewables are like good for the planet and good for fighting climate change, but I think like another aspect of like a renewable energy economy that's so cool and interesting is that if people are able to like provide their own energy like from their home and in their neighborhood, then communities can have like democratic control of their energy resources, and we don't have to be dependent on like these giant corporations like big oil to get all of our energy. And like a lot of times we don't know like where our energy is coming from, and we have no say in like what type of energy we're using. But with renewables that are like locally based, then communities can have control over their power. Yeah,
exactly. And that was a good point, because there's people getting rich.
Yeah,
people getting rich in all of this, and that's just really, really sad. What can we do? Because, there was a lot of people affected by all these hurricanes, and this is all because of the overarching problem. What can we do for these people? Like, have you guys worked with any hurricane relief efforts, anything? What can be done right now?
Yeah, so with everything that just happened with Hurricane Florence in the Carolinas, our big effort that we're working on right now is we're partnered with a group called Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, and they are collecting supplies and donations and volunteers to take to the Carolinas. So we've been running a donation drive in Orlando near our offices with another group called Organized Florida. They've been hosting the supplies, and what's so important about the work that they're doing is that a lot of times we see when disasters strike areas, these big relief groups come in and they mismanaged where donations are going, and a lot of the money that gets donated doesn't actually go to the people on the ground who need it, and the people that have been directly impacted don't have a say in how the aid is being used. And that's true of most big relief corporations, but Mutual Aid is really dedicated to making sure that the people on the front lines who have been impacted are the ones who have control over those resources and get to say where supplies are going and how aid is being used. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I think you touched on the main thing.
Yeah. Then that was perfect. That's very informative. I like what you were talking about. Can you say in Spanish, because we have a Spanish-speaking audience, what you were telling me about the connection between voting and this problem that we have?
Yes. Es muy importante que la gente vota en estas elecciones que vienen el 6 de noviembre. El huracán María afectó a muchos de nuestros amigos puertorriqueños y es muy importante que hacemos la conexión entre huracán María y las industrias petroleras que están polucionando.
Sí,
afectando el clima, y también los políticos que están siendo corruptados por estas industrias, y esta es nuestra oportunidad de tenerlos accountable. Okay, para
that's perfect. We speak Spanglish here.
Okay.
So that's perfect.
Okay, eso es nuestra oportunidad para tener nuestras voces oídas por los políticos y para demandar un futuro mejor para nuestra gente.
Gracias. Y como ya dije, es bien importante hacer esa conexión entre que el cambio climático, todo esto que nos ocurrió con el huracán María, y tenemos la oportunidad de elegir unos políticos que sí van a prevenir eso, que sí van a crear unas políticas que ayuden a our environment, our environment. Y sí, por favor, a todo esto, el punto es que entendamos la importancia de salir a votar. And I think with that, that was a very informative talk, and thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope we have you again so we can keep talking about this. We have to keep pushing this.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.